Oh, hello. Greetings, Reclaimers. I am 343 Guilty Spark, monitor of Podcast Evolved. Protocol dictates that you must listen. Come, we have a wealth of knowledge to share with you, and you don't want to make my blue eye red. Do you, Reclaimers?
Welcome, Spartans, to Podcast Evolved, your home for Halo. I am your host, Tom, and with me today is Oran.
Hey, what's up? Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, thank you for having me back, guys, and letting me off the leash. This is very exciting. It'll probably get derailed, so brace yourselves for that. We have also got Aaron.
Hi, guys.
And David.
Hello, everybody.
Now we can speak. I don't say anything until you say hello to me, because it's I need to line this up in editing later. I need to wait. I need to wait till I'm told I can talk.
You're allowed to talk now, Aaron. Okay, so this week is a lore week, and we are continuing our mini-series, The Road to Infinite, with Prometheans. But before we get started, check out our awesome website, halopodcastevolve.com. or halopodcast.com, and it features all of our shows, which include Mission Debrief, which is a deep dive into every Halo Games campaign, mission by mission, the Halo Book Club, which is thorough discussions on the extended lore media like novels, comic books, and short stories, and also our newest show, Builds with Blocks, which is centered around the micro action figures and brick-based construction sets of the Halo universe. And that's the show I'm usually kept away from all the main stuff that's going on.
I wonder if we should change that intro a little bit, because it is our newest show, but we guys have been around for half a year now.
Yeah, that is true.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
We can do our most awesome show. You and Colin and Matt will have to get a snazzy adjective for us to put on here.
We'll probably have to change it up when Mission Debrief ends anyway.
That is true.
Maybe Mission Debrief can be last, and say also you can catch previous episodes or something like that.
The Evolved Archive.
Yeah, here's a live discussion of how we rename our show.
Yeah. Okay, so moving forwards, we do also have a Patreon page at patreon.com/HaloPodcastEvolved, where we offer a variety of exclusive rewards for our patrons, like early episodes and swag. And we would like to take this moment to thank our patrons for their continued support. So thank you so much, guys!
Yes.
Thanks, peeps.
Thank you.
Yeah!
Month after month, it's amazing.
And finally, we encourage all of our listeners who want more to listen to support Audible. Listen to the growing collection of Halo novels all in one place, along with thousands of other novels, podcasts, guided wellness programs, Audible originals, and more. You can use the URL audibletrial.com/podcast evolved to learn more and to start your free trial today. And I will say that Audible has been how I've got to experience Shadows of Reach, so I do definitely recommend it because that's been really awesome. There you go, first-hand knowledge for you guys. So, what has everyone been up to this week? Aaron, I'm going to give you permission to talk again. What have you done this week on Halo?
Thank you, kind sir. I appreciate this. Let's see, today I played some Halo 5 and some Master Chief Collection.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah, I sat down, I was kind of having a quiet day and just sort of didn't really move from the sofa, and I thought, I don't want to play a Division. What new game shall I play? And then Warzone Firefight called to me and I went, nah, we'll do some of that instead. I'm currently almost level 89. So I figure as long as they delay Halo till next November, there's a slim chance I can get to 152. I'm sort of plugging away at that a bit. I had a troll today that kept annoying the fuck out of me.
They still exist?
Yeah, he kept trying to nudge my ghost off the map with his ghost and then just wouldn't leave me alone. It was like, what? Why? What is the point? We're trying to kill the Prometheans and you're actually getting us shot at because you're busy nudging me off the map. Anyway, I got over that game, blocked him and moved on, so hopefully never see him again.
Nice. I like how you were training for today's episode. We're killing the Prometheans, though.
Yeah, well, it's mostly... There are a large number of Prometheans in every Warzone Firefight map. I know they're like the big enemy in Halo, but part of me just wishes there was some flood enemies in Firefight.
Yeah, that would be
really
cool.
Just wish there was something different. The other level I did play was Keys.
Ooh.
Yeah, my nephew took a notion that he wanted to do some co-op and was like, right, what do you want to play? And he was Keys, and I went, brilliant, it's not Cortana. We played some of that for a while. He wanted infinite ammo turned on, so of course I just charged through the level the whole time. May have accidentally shot him in the back because he stuck me at one point.
I'm impressed it was an accident, to be fair.
He threw grenades everywhere. He was not paying attention. He stuck me in the back of the head. So he got what he deserved.
Classic co-op move right there.
You know when you're going through the cliffs and you get to the bit overlooking the lake with the hunters?
Yeah.
Yep.
And he was like, oh, look, a sniper rifle. And he stood up to the edge to shoot at a hunter, and I may have just shot him in the back of the head and went, oops. Sorry.
It
Nice.
happens.
That's all right. My favorite sticking co-op buddy in the back of the head is the Truth and Reconciliation. My buddy and I, we were playing, and after we get into the Truth and Reconciliation, we navigate some of the corridors, and we go to the hangar bay, and we go out and then just get immediately shot at. And so then I start running backwards to get cover, and then my buddy yells, "Grenade, grenade!" And he throws a grenade, and I run backwards into it, and then we both blow up and die.
Nice.
That's always stuck with me after all these years.
You managed to take him with you. That's pretty good.
I find the problem with me is I tend to stick a flood that charges me. That happened quite a few times where I was backtracking and letting rip with a shotgun, panicking, going like, fuck. It worked out all right. Have I done anything else this week? I started a non-Halo audiobook because we're up to date now.
Cool.
Ooh.
I've gone out of my comfort zone, and on recommendation from my sister-in-law, I have started the Mistborn books.
Cool.
Yes. Good choice.
I don't typically venture into fantasy very often, but I've got 2/3 of the way through this book in about a week. It's 25 and a half hours long, so like I'm churning through it rightly.
Good stuff. They're good books.
Just to double check purely out of interest, do they also happen to be available on Audible?
They are, because that's where I use all my audiobooks.
Nicely done. Tom.
Tom's going to have a busy holiday.
Yeah.
I recently picked up my subscription again. I found they were doing like an offer if you were a lap subscriber and you came back, you get your first 3 months half price. So it was like, I may as well. This book's a trilogy. I'll just have those, thanks.
There you go.
I am very tempted now. David, what about you? What have you been up to?
Very little other than my very last ever mission for Mission Debrief.
It's not very last. It's
Very last, Oran. For the period
For
of
a
time.
period of time.
For a significant period
Halo
of time.
Infinite is infinitely delayed, so that's it.
Don't even mess, Tom.
Clearly the episode I'm hosting doesn't count. All right, David.
well, David said
Well,
last
it's
mission
the last
that he
mission. The last mission. So I played Manifestations, the end of Awakening the Nightmare. It's a pretty cool last mission, actually. It's quite enjoyable.
I like it, fighting that big giant flood.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun mission, and they give you loads. You don't get the Scarab, though. That's the one thing that annoyed me in all of the DLC. You never get access to actually build your own Scarab. But you get more or less everything else, and it's a good fun mission. You have tons of resources, and you can just let rip with the leader powers and stuff like that. So it's pretty fun.
That's cool.
that's pretty much all I did.
I might pick up the DLC at some point. I'm kind of at the point where I've played both Halo Wars games exclusively through Game Pass, and I kind of... Part of me doesn't like the idea of buying DLC for a game I don't explicitly own, which is really weird.
Yeah.
But those games are never going away, so it's not like you buy the DLC. Because I've had that dilemma to where I was like, oh, well, if I buy the DLC and the game goes away, then I have to buy the game. Should I just buy the ultimate or complete edition to where, I get that little bit of a discount on top of my Game Pass discount? So I know where you're coming from, but I will say with a Halo game, it's probably safe to just get it.
Well, I am definitely going to have some busy holidays then.
It's not that long. Either of all the DLCs.
It's worth playing though, because I like that it comes with the blur cutscenes. They are very nice.
They're short and sweet, but they're, blur is blur. They know their shit.
Throw that on your 4K TV.
You'll never see more beautiful, high quality flood.
That's true.
If you can describe them as beautiful. So, what have you been up to then, Oran? Have you done much in the way of Halo this week?
Aside from putting together today's script, not really. I did go into an Evolutions audiobook sort of spree last time we spoke, but since then, not so much. It's been real busy at work. But I am gearing up to play some more Destiny with the expansion right around the corner. So
nice.
It's kind of Bungie related, if you want to call that. But Halo related, no. It's kind of on the back burner if it's not related to the show.
Cool, no, that's all good. How many expansions have they done for Destiny 2 now?
It's gotten a little weird because in the first year they had 2 expansions.
Yeah.
A Warmind one and a Curse of Osiris. The other one I think was just called Warmind. And then for year 2 they had the big Forsaken expansion, and they kind of moved to seasonal content.
Okay.
And I don't really... They had mini... I don't even know what we call them. I guess they're just mini DLCs or just DLCs for their seasonal content that you get an annual pass for. And so you had 3 of those. Then for year 3, they had Shadowkeep, and then the same sort of thing to where you had 3 seasons with all of those content. And then now you get Beyond Light. And so presumably you'll get Beyond Light and then another 3 or 4 seasons of seasonal content that you can then, spend $10 to get bonus battle pass content. So I don't fully know, but I've been doing a lot of other stuff, getting ready for it because the new expansion looks pretty cool and it's on Game Pass. Honestly, I was not going to buy the expansion, but when they said it was coming on Game Pass, I said, all right, fine. I guess I'm going to play it because why not?
The base game or the expansion that comes to Game Pass?
The expansion, yeah. So Destiny 2 is free to play. And when the expansion comes out, they're vaulting a lot of content, almost half the game, if not more. And so there's going to be a new free-to-play sort of model where I believe you should be able to play Forsaken and Shadowkeep for free. And then the Beyond Light portion you actually pay for. Those all the DLCs are available on Game Pass. The thing that you still need to pay for is the seasonal content, because you buy, I don't know what it's called, but you essentially buy the battle pass, and that gives you that the second, the bottom tier unlock track. But with that, you also get access to certain activities and bonus missions and stuff like that. So you can spend $10 for more story content and stuff and more rewards, or you can be like me and just don't play. As long as I get the raid, I really don't care. For me, I'm like a raider.
I find that whole model really interesting because obviously we know that Infinite is going to be free to play, at least for multiplayer, so I'm really interested to see if they're going to follow that kind of a format, if they're maybe going to do the season pass, kind of like what Modern Warfare found a lot of success with. So I always find it really interesting hearing about how different companies are kind of approaching that, giving players a set level of accessibility to their products and then adding more on top of it. I think it's really interesting how that dynamic has shifted over time.
I could see them going that way. Like, it feels like they dabble with it in Master Chief Collection at the minute because a warm up to it. So I'd be all right with that. Like, if you were getting extra rewards and it cost you a tenner every 3 months, I would be okay with, especially if it keeps the maps free. That's the most important thing, I think, is maps and stuff need to be free to keep the player base happy.
Keep everyone together. Yeah.
Yeah, because buying DLC maps segregated the player base in past Halo
I'm pretty sure
games.
no one does that anymore, though, right?
Doesn't like Call of Duty still do that?
I think they were the last to do it. I think they may have dropped that now with like Warzone and that. That seems to be
Modern
their new
Warfare,
thing.
everything was free. It was just a season pass for cosmetic items only.
Infinite's in this very unique position to where we do have a standard that we got with Halo 5 where every like month or two there was another content drop for like a good year, like a year and some change. But we also have all these other sort of, like you said, Tom, these other models that these sustainable games utilize, and Infinite could very easily dabble into those, and it's just a matter of what they choose and how to do it. And the kind of first thing that comes, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the whole armor coating fiasco that's going on right now, I could very easily see a battle pass type of reward system incorporate these armor coatings, and I could see some of them locked behind the pay track as opposed to the free track if Infinite were to go along that model. But right now with the seasonal tracks that we have for Master Chief Collection, it's all free. You just play the game, earn experience, and unlock it with your coins or whatever. But there's no pay to do something faster or pay to complete it all sort of model in MCC. So it'll be interesting to see how Infinite implements it all.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. It's a lot, like you say, it's something that I could talk about a lot, but obviously I want to keep us moving forwards.
So professional, Tom. Look at that, so professional.
In terms of what I've done this week, I will actually share a little tease, although I have a feeling that this episode will go out after the project has gone out anyway, so it won't be so much of a tease.
Well, just plug it as if, I mean, this will be, it's about a 10-day turnaround, so just plug it if the video will be out.
So on our YouTube right now, you should be able to see a little project which I spent a lot of time this week editing, which is an interview with the head of digital marketing for Boys and also the brand manager for the Halo line over at Jazzwares. So they are the guys who have been doing 3 3/4-inch action figures, vehicles, the 6-inch Spartan collection, the roleplay energy sword, which has just kind of spread around the community recently. They've kind of done all of those toys. So we had the chance to speak to them about their experience with Halo, their experience with the toy industry, and also quite a bit about that relationship with 343 and what it's like working on products.
How long have they been in the market?
Jazzwares is quite a fairly old company. They do a lot of the wrestling figures and they do all of the Fortnite figures and things like that. I think that they started work on the Halo line in 2018. I think that was when they said in the interview. So they've kind of been working around Halo for a while. But it was really cool as well because both of them have played Halo since Combat Evolved. So they're very much the people for this job. So yeah, that's it for me really. I've not got too much else. I've played little bits here and there, but that's kind of been the biggest thing.
Good work, Tom.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. It's an awesome opportunity and an interview.
Honestly, just geeking out about Halo with people who have worked in the television industry, which was really cool to hear about, and have then gone on to work in the toy industry was awesome. I could not ask for a better experience. So yeah. But continuing with professional, Tom, we will move on from that, and we are going to dive into this week's topic, which is obviously Halo lore, the Road to Infinite number 14. And this is where professional Tom kind of dives off a cliff, because I don't know anything beyond this point.
So you're going to be student Tom now.
Yeah.
as you learn more about Prometheans, as I'm sure a lot of our listeners think they may know a lot, as even I learned quite a bit reading and researching up for the topic today. And I think this topic, I kind of talked about this a little bit before we started recording, is that the Prometheans, I feel like, are very much an iceberg for the Halo community, because the majority of the player base that played Halo 4 and then Halo 5, they don't read the extended media. And even if they do, the Forerunner trilogy tends to be a little bit harder of a read, and it kind of turns some dedicated lore fans away just because of the type of content that it is. Prometheans really are this iceberg to where you play the games and you fight the knights and the crawlers and the watchers, but there's so much more underneath the surface. And so the bulk of our show is actually a lot about the history of Prometheans, as opposed to kind of learning more about what the armatures and these constructs are. But we will dive into them as well. But before we tackle today's lore topic, I wanted to remind everybody what we talked about last time, and if you're not listening to this back to back, and if you're listening to us on sort of the live release timeline, it's a couple months since the last episode, but we discussed Sentinels and how they're autonomous machines created by the Forerunners to construct, design, defend, and maintain their structures and facilities, such as the Ark, Halo installations, shield worlds, etc., etc. They're produced through Sentinel manufacturing facilities, which are usually located on large installations like the Arks and the Halos and shield worlds. And most installations, especially important ones, even have a Sentinel defense network, which is a system that coordinates all the Sentinel defenses against threats on or to the installation that the network is attached to. So we see this very much so happening on the Ark, and even to a degree on the Halos, the monitors kind of intervening as well. We also discussed a dozen different types of Sentinels that have appeared throughout the Halo universe. It literally, like at least a dozen. There's a lot. And then we also kind of asked, what impact will Sentinels have on Installation 07 in Halo Infinite? We know the ring will be partly destroyed, so we imagine there'll be an impact. So if you didn't check out that episode, premiered on September 23rd. It's on our feed and on our YouTube. You can catch up and listen to that episode, but continue listening for Prometheans. To give you a quick overview, the Prometheans are the highest and most respected group of warrior servants in the Forerunner ecumene. They were led by the Diadact during the Human and Forerunner War, and then they kind of got composed to survive the Forerunner and Flood War. And we'll kind of talk about what composed means, but they definitely took on a different form during the Forerunner and Flood War. And then the Diadact and his composed Prometheans remained dormant since the Forerunner and Flood War until they were awoken in 2557 to again immediately oppose humans. So I guess, Tom, if you have any questions, or if David and Aaron, you want to just jump in at any one of these things, I'll just kind of go through a little bit of history and background before we dive into the Diadact, because I think the Diadact's a very important Promethean that we need to discuss, that kind of gives way to what we did in Halo 4, what we kind of continue to do in Halo 5, and maybe even give us some insight to what might happen in Halo Infinite. Prometheans are hulking creatures. They're very muscular. They're 11 feet and 6 inches, which is about 3.5 meters tall, sometimes even more. They're very sophisticated mentally in their perception of reality, which is very apparent in battle. They kind of share this sensory information with their commanders and other individual warriors. They observe battle kind of as it unfolds in separate frames of reference, while their experience of the surrounding world seems to kind of slow down. And this kind of interesting perception is sort of compared to quote-unquote Spartan time, in some of the novels, and kind of how the augmentation process is given to the Spartans, where they, when they do an action, at least initially, they kind of see the world slow as their reflexes is just immediate to kind of their thinking and action. And so that type of speed and perception is comparable to what the Prometheans were doing, if not, or most likely to a higher extent for them, as they did their sort of fighting and other work.
That makes sense, because they're like computer now, like digital brains or whatever,
this kind of implies that that even happened beforehand, to where like once manipulators became warrior servants and Prometheans, that that transformation that they made kind of gave them this type of mentality.
Better brains.
And I can even see it going a step further once they get composed and given a construct sort of vessel. So yeah, it kind of, it does make a lot of sense. That's why it's how they can teleport, just the moment you start shooting at them.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
They utilize an assortment of combat skins that vary in class, which measure their effectiveness. So the combat skins include more than just battle armor. It's also in their weapon class and even vehicle class. And something interesting that I saw here is that civilian personnel, just kind of general Forerunners and other Prometheans, they're required to wear at least class 6 combat armor, whereas military personnel were required to wear at least class 12 combat skin is what they kind of call it. And then like a little bit of trivia in the library of Halo CE, when 343 Guilty Spark meets Master Chief, he actually comments on his armor, on how it is effective against the Flood. However, Master Chief should upgrade it because 343 scans it as only a class 2 combat skin, whereas most Prometheans have class 12. And he even touches on this again in the third game at the end in Halo 3 on the Halo mission, to where now Master Chief has an upgraded armor. 343 still says, you didn't even upgrade your armor. So it's still a class 2. And so there's a lot to be desired in terms of effectiveness, especially when you're fighting the Flood.
I'd be interested to know if the modifications that Cortana made to the armor increased its combat skin at all. Because obviously, like, we don't really know to the full extent what she did, but I just find that to be like a fascinating bit of lore if it did make any improvements that would increase how it ranks in that, because that armor gets a lot of abuse from Prometheans in Halo 4.
Very much so. Maybe her augmentations, or not augmentations, but yeah, her sort of upgrades that she did between 3 and 4 could have given it just enough of an edge to make it a class 3 combat skin.
I'd say, like, at best, I'd imagine the Infinite Armor's maybe a class 3.
Jeez.
It seems like Forerunner armor's just way above it. When they cover it in the Forerunner books, you don't have to be augmented to wear it, because they stick a couple of prehistoric humans in it at one stage, and it actually turns a short dwarf human into a full-sized humanoid, because the armor makes up the difference in his body.
Well, we have explained how Black Team got absolutely wrecked.
Poor Black Team.
Black Team were missing the most important armor class of all, plot armor.
Yeah. Very true. Right. So yeah, hopefully maybe we'll get more of that in Halo Infinite. Maybe we can get some insight into the combat skin effectiveness of the Mark 7. Something else that was on here that I wanted to touch on for those who have read the books, because I read about war sphinxes and had a hard time really picturing what they are and really what they do. It's very vaguely touched upon and kind of just alluded to in the books.
To me, it sounds like uber mech armor.
Kind of, yeah. It's basically like Mech Assault or something, to where it's essentially a ship. It's even classified as a mid-size fighting suit and as a combat vehicle. And it also makes me wonder, like, if that's a mid-size, then I guess like a Phaeton is like a small size combat vehicle, because these things are definitely bigger than Phaetons.
I always had the feeling it was like a flying mantis. Like a space-worthy flying sort of... It sounds like they have arms and legs, but they can fly and float and shoot and do all sorts of weird shit.
That's what I mean, Uber Mech Man.
Yeah, Uber Mech Man. Essentially a transformer that can be a mantis and then a ship.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, because obviously the Phaetons have got like all the hard light bits that maneuver around them as they boost and whatnot, so I imagine it's kind of got the ability to literally become a transformer.
And, not be shit like a mantis.
Or just very low maneuverability.
Yeah.
To give you a sense of scale, they're about 10 meters tall and 20 meters long, and have kind of a strange curve to them, and it's because they can be both upright and kind of the slanted ship, sort of like picture an airplane with a tail, but without the wings.
Think of Boba Fett's ship, Slave One. Do you know, that can kind of alternate?
Yeah, kind of so. Yeah, a little bit to that effect. These war sphinxes were utilized in large quantities to, they're capable of planetary atmosphere assaults as well as space flight, and they were used as like capital ship escorts. You could overwhelm other enemy ships if you had a large number of war sphinxes, and also to deploy large-scale bombardment operations. So they were very versatile, seemingly support vehicles, but could also, lead their own charge. And then, like Aaron said, they are capable to kind of alter themselves to be sort of bipedal and walk with arms and legs, much like a mantis. And I think we even get some of that when they like escort the Diadact out of the cryptum when Bornstiller first discovers them.
Also, fun, creepy fact, they have a black box that records the last moments and thoughts of the pilot.
Oh my god.
It kind of like traps a snapshot of your essence. What Oran was mentioning there, where they like guard the Didact's cryptum, those are actually the mental patterns of his dead children who died in those war sphinxes.
Man, oh man. Oh, because it's been 100,000 years.
I think they were killed in combat.
And then he put them into the sphinxes. That's what I thought he did.
Well, I think they died in them. They died like fighting, and what normally happens is you like download the black box, swipe the war sphinx, and that's it. But because they were his kids, he couldn't do it, so he just kept them as like weird mementos of his children, which is very sad.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's really dark.
It is. Halo's very dark.
Halo is pretty dark. Another little bit of trivia before we move on to talk more about the Diadact is that the War Sphinxes were actually originally planned to be in Halo 5 Guardians, but were cut from the game. I'm not really sure why, but we do have some concept art of them that you can check out on Halopedia. I think they're also in Halo Mythos, maybe, for an illustration.
Yeah.
Ooh, interesting. It's worth a look.
I can just imagine them being so cool on the Kamchatka level. Just imagine that big space battle you run past with Phaetons and also War Sphinxes. That would have been so amazing.
I mean, it would have definitely been very chilling to kind of see all these Guardians appear, but then, on the left and right of each Guardian, you have essentially a sentry because of scale, but these two War Sphinxes. And or if you even fought one with the Kraken, a lot of big moments that they could have added in there. Talking about the Diadact, though, probably the most important Promethean, I did want to spend a good amount of time on him. So we talked about how he woke up from a cryptum, which kind of is how the book Cryptum begins. But there are a lot of things that happened before that, as well as a lot of things that happened after that. So to kind of give you a sense of him, the Diadact is a Promethean. He is simply known as the Diadact, and he held the status as protector of the Ecumene. He led the warrior servant rate and is the supreme commander of the entire Forerunner military. So this guy is pretty up there, and there's actually another Diadact, if you are aware, and I will get into the differences between the two Diadacts in a little bit. But this Diadact is the Diadact, the guy, the one you fight in Halo 4.
This is the one I know.
Yeah, this is the one you know. Yeah, you don't know the other one. Rest assured, all will be answered. The Diadact wholeheartedly believed that the Forerunners were forever to hold the mantle of responsibility, and that's where his sort of ego kind of becomes his downfall. He greatly opposed the use of the Halo Array when that was sort of suggested to combat the Flood. And he eventually married the Librarian, who, as we know, was, of course, in charge of the conservation method that led to the collection of every species in the galaxy to reseed the galaxy after the Halo Array fires. So for those of you that either have read the book and don't really remember, or haven't read the book like our dear host Tom, I tried to summarize at least what the Diadact kind of does, because it influences and really lays the groundwork for why we're fighting the Prometheans that we see in Halo 4. And this is the key information that you get throughout the books. But definitely, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of conflict and cool space magic that are in these trilogy of books. But this kind of spoils some of those moments throughout all 3 books. So just kind of fair warning.
Just chill, I'll let you off.
Towards the end of the Human and Forerunner War, the Flood emerged and kind of became this new threat. There was disputes over tactics to combat the Flood. The Didact proposed that they build shield worlds where they can use these constructs to study the Flood as well as shield themselves from the Flood in the event of an outbreak. And they would kind of hop throughout the galaxy to these different shield worlds to protect themselves as the Flood hopped around to fight them. The Master Builder, whose name is Faber, he proposed, well, let's just build a giant super weapon, which we now know as the Halo Array, and we just kill them. Easy. And then we can hide in the shield world, and that can protect us. Well, after some deliberation, the Druidicals favored the Master Builder and told the Didact to submit to the Master Builder and command your legion of forces, since you're controlled of the entire Forerunner military, to support the Master Builder in building the Halo Array and combating the Flood under his discretion. The Didact did not like that, so he refused, was then exiled into a cryptum, which is essentially a space prison cell where you get locked into it and you can only be unlocked from the outside, and you can be there for 1 day, 2,000s and thousands and millions of years. So he was locked into a cryptum for about 1,000 years, and the librarian hid the cryptum on Earth, then known as Irde Tyrene, and he was awoken by Bornstellar Makes Eternal Lasting, as well as 2 other humans, Chakas and Riser. Bornstellar is a Forerunner manipular, so he's just like an adolescent. He doesn't have another rate just yet. That's kind of the way the rates work in the Forerunner Society. And kind of during their gallivanting throughout the galaxy, the Didact kind of needs more power because it was stripped away from him and he can't access the domain. So he does what's called a brevet mutation, which is where he imprints himself onto another host, in this case Bornstellar, and essentially creates a copy of himself. And this is where we get our 2 Diadacts. And so the Diadact now becomes the Diadact, UR Diadact, and Bornstellar now becomes the ISO Diadact. And the only difference between the 2 is that they consciously think like themselves. So the Diadact still has his sort of menacing and harsh ideals, whereas Bornstellar and the ISO Diadact now has more of Bornstellar's kind of good heart, so to speak. But they share the same memories, the same consciousness, and it's kind of weird when they kind of share the librarian in a weird way.
Yeah, that's the bit. They share the wife as well.
Share the wife.
Not at the same time.
So yeah, a lot of fun stuff happening between the ISO and the Diadact.
And the librarian.
And the librarian. And you can know all about it too. Just read the book. So then now the Didact regains control, or at least access to the domain, and he starts doing some stuff. I'm going to kind of fast forward here. We're now deeper into the Forerunner and Flood War, to where the Didact is starting to regain himself. He still wants to combat the Flood and fight against it and oppose the Master Builder. So he reunites himself with his Promethean soldiers from 1,000 years ago, and he goes to the planet or the Shield World Requiem that we go in Halo 5. That's kind of his like safe haven. That's kind of like his realm.
It was his original, I think Requiem is like Shield World 1.0. It was the original. Also, can we add in one note? During like when he came back in that, he may have been mentally tortured by the Flood, which is why he snaps. This is what causes this final crazy move that he does in Requiem.
Oh. Did he get like captured?
He gets cast adrift in Flood space by Faber and left to die, except he doesn't die. The Flood tortures him and like breaks his mind and then leaves him to go, because kind of like with Mending and Bias, the Gravemind knew that a tortured, broken didact was more dangerous than a composed or than like a consumed one.
He's using it like a Trojan horse.
Yeah, he like, this is why he veers so much from the isodidact, because he's just snapped. And when he goes to Requiem, he talks all of it. Sorry, I've kind of taken over here.
Oh, go ahead. I fast forwarded through this part, so but I think it's good to know. So continue.
This is where the robotic Prometheans come from. You see, he decides he's going to do one last stand. He convinces his last of the Prometheans to convert and compose, so they all become the mechanized knights and stuff that you see. But he doesn't have enough, so he also goes and raids a halo that has a population of humans on it, which pisses off the librarian, and she realizes there's no saving him. So she comes to Requiem, basically tricks him, drugs him, locks him up in a cryptum, and hopes that 100,000 years deep meditating with the domain will fix his broken mind. And she leaves all of the Prometheans on like guard duty. That's why in Halo 4 they change from... Did they change from blue to...
Yeah, they changed from blue to orange.
Blue to orangey, yeah.
When they're blue, they're on babysitter mode from the librarian. Also, fun fact, the Promethean that was like in charge there was a fellow, like was a soldier that worked with the didact and secretly loved him. So she was the last one to convert, and it was her that the librarian left her instructions with, was like, look over him and mind him. So he ends up, basically, the short version is the domain never came back online, and he went exceptionally doolally in the cryptum. And he has all these mechanized Prometheans then, like Requiem's just full of them. So there are, I suppose technically the last like biological Promethean then is the isodidact.
I imagine there might be some lingering biological Promethean also out there, because the Forerunners in general just kind of left the galaxy. So I imagine there's some, but in terms of like notable ones that we're aware of would be probably the isodidact that's just out in the galaxy, or rather the universe somewhere.
So I'm probably skipping ahead a bit then, but does that mean that he's just still out there now? Because obviously we know what happens with the didact in Halo 4, and then we'll touch on it later as well, because obviously you get a little bit more story with him. But is the isodidact just kind of left?
There's a short story that talks about his last moments, shall we say.
But yeah, the isodidact and the librarian kind of...
In theory, they're still out there.
They kind of exit the story, you know, but they're not like dead or anything.
The short story that they're in that kind of like wraps up where they are leaves it very much open to he could come back if he was required.
Okay. So they're like the equivalent of a main character leaving a show after its first season. They could come back in the future if they get a better deal from the writers, but if not, we'll stick with these new characters.
Yeah, kind of so. And yeah, let's find a way to make it a little confusing if the diadact were to return, but we fought a different diadact. It'd be a lot to explain in a game.
Back before we found out where Guilty Spark was going when he made his reappearance, that was why I assumed we were getting the didact back, because he was on the hunt for the librarian, but they did something different with that, and I was like, ooh. But he's there.
Yeah, he's out there. ISO's out there. We don't know where, though. But Aaron, you kind of touched on kind of where the story was going. You had the didact started composing his Prometheans into mechanized Prometheans as a way to not get infected by the flood, since they weren't a biological being. And then he needed more. He got more from a halo that was later destroyed. This is one of the original 12, but not Zeta Halo. It was just another random one. So yeah, so he got locked up into a cryptum again, and the librarian even sealed up Requiem somehow. And that's why 100,000 years later, when Forward Unto Dawn was just floating in space, Requiem was, I guess, delivered some sort of pulse and read the Master Chief as a human.
I got the feeling that the didact, like over the 100,000 years, had found a way to like reach out from his cryptum, because I think it's him that draws Chief in and attracts the Infinity.
Oh, I thought that was the planet that just did that. But I know The diadact, he was able to manipulate like the signal that he was putting out once they were on Requiem to lure Cortana and Chief like directly to him. But in terms of like opening up Requiem and sucking him and Jules Covenant in, I think was just
The automated things, just picking up reclaimers and just letting him in.
yeah, that's the sense that I got.
I suppose it doesn't really matter. I mean, one way or the other, we know that he was able to obviously direct them to him to deliberately open it.
Obviously, later in Halo 4 as well, the librarian meets up with Chief, so it could be she had left some kind of program in place in case he, or, you know, like you say, Reclaimers as a whole were detected to let them in so that interaction could happen.
True. That would make sense.
Yeah, and then that whole sort of side plot was her unlocking his geisha.
See, guys, I can contribute to lore episodes.
They go on from that in Spartan Ops to like, they really bluntly show you that Prometheans are humans, because they mention that in Spartan Ops. They're like, this Promethean has human memories, and then they realize it's the people from New Phoenix.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You get your da moment of going, oh fuck.
Yeah, the mechanized Prometheans are a combination, or at least when Chief and Cortana first get there, it's a combination of the most loyal Prometheans from the your Didax army, and composed humans from this Halo. And then as you know, then kind of Halo 4 events happen, and at the end of the game, when the New Phoenix event happens, those unfortunate humans get composed, which then turn into more mechanized Prometheans that join the Didax forces. And then without going into too much detail, I wanted to plug our own stuff, is that if you wanted to learn more about what happens after Halo 4 and all that, you can listen to Mission Debrief. They talk about Spartan Ops. We also have a book club on Escalation Volume 2 that talks about the Didax story on Installation 3, where he kind of escapes the portal he falls into at the end of Halo 4. But the gist that you need to know is that these mechanized Prometheans are kind of just the remnants of the biological Forerunner Prometheans from 100,000 years ago.
And some ancient humans.
And they're ancient humans. And even though Requiem was destroyed at the end of Spartan Ops, through playing Halo 5, there are still Prometheans around that managed to escape. And they were seemingly controlled by the Warden Eternal, as well as Cortana. So there's some mystery in there. And that's kind of where we are timeline-wise. But before we start talking about predictions, I wanted to talk about the tip of the iceberg that kind of a lot of people know about, which is the mechanical Prometheans that you fight in Halo 4 and 5. You know, again, the Didax saw them as a novel and effective strategy to fight the Flood without the risk of any biological infection. The Knights are your leader units, and these are the composed individuals. Their sort of construct is based on the neural patterns or what's called essence of an individual organic being. And then from them, there are armigers, which are purely constructs with AI built inside of them to fight. You know, none of the following are organic beings. However, the Watchers...
No, I'm pretty sure the space dogs are space dogs.
The space dogs are the crawlers are composed dogs.
Marley Amir's got a whole different meaning now.
There's a theory out there from David Arnold that the crawlers are space dogs. But they're otherwise quadrupedal automatons, so just robots. And the soldiers are your bipedal automatons, just your standard ground forces that are, you know, more or less your human robots. But Watchers are a little bit more unique, though, because the Watchers, they're specialized sentinels or like defensive drones, if you want to kind of look at them that way, and they detach from every Knight. And they're still controlled by a low-level Ancilla, but they're based within the Knight's sort of organic neural pattern and all that kind of stuff. So they are AI, but they're also organic. They're kind of a weird...
They're assholes, that's what they are.
They're assholes, yes.
Project a shield, throw your grenade back at you. They have little creepy fucking faces.
They heal knights back after you kill them on Legendary and stuff.
But I will say, assassinating a Watcher is pretty satisfying.
Yeah, 100%.
Those are some really good animations. And then finally, I want to talk about the Warden Eternal very briefly and say that the Warden Eternal is not a Promethean. He does look like a mechanical Promethean, but he is an AI that lives within the domain. He is the warden of the domain, and he does partner with Cortana in Halo 5, and his physical form is very, very similar to the construction of mechanical Promethean knights.
Is it definitely confirmed that he's AI? I was under the impression he was composed.
They kind of allude to like not telling you exactly what he is, one or the other, because doesn't Exuberant Witness they have like some cryptic line about what he is or isn't?
Yeah, she says something about, oh no, he's not a monitor, or like something like that. He's not an AI.
He might be composed, but he also might be something else entirely, which is interesting.
All right, well, I guess he could be a Promethean, but I feel like, I don't know, like I don't really see a Promethean being regarded as a warden of the domain.
I think he's made through the same process. I think like he's like someone else, like a didact, but I assume in my head he's built the same way. Like I figure he was composed and then given lots of mechanical bodies.
So the Monitor Tragic Solitude, which is the Monitor of the Ark, was a Juridical that essentially was like, yo, we need someone to be the steward of the Ark. I will volunteer as tribute, and became a Monitor.
That's right, yeah.
Like, I feel like something similar would be the case for the Warden, as opposed to just some random Promethean being composed and being this role, because it's a pretty high up their position, I will say, to be in charge of protecting the domain.
Yeah, and he has command of all the other Promethean forces in a way, because whenever you encounter him, he's kind of always flanked by high-end knights, or kind of like on his own with 3 units in a never-ending boss battle, so he kind of feels like he's got that authority over them.
Which makes sense given like how important the domain is to like the Forerunner like way of life, and how integrated it is in their like technology and stuff.
I'm gonna blow your guys' minds for a second, just from my background here with all the merchandise. As far as I'm aware, no company has ever made a figure of the Warden Eternal.
I'm kind of surprised at that, because like he is, as like new characters come this last couple of years, I think like I liked him more than the Didact.
No, you didn't. No one liked him more than the Didact.
I did. Like the Didact in Halo 4 doesn't get a lot of screen time, and he's a bit sort of...
He's got super dialogue, man. He's so, like, charismatic.
I will say, though, like, I appreciate the Didact's dialogue more now, knowing everything from the books, of just like, oh my gosh, you're so menacing. I know what you're capable of, and I know, like, why you have so much hatred in what you're saying and kind of how you're saying it. Like, that's kind of cool. But, like, I got none of that when playing the game.
I don't know, yeah. I feel like when you play back through Halo 5, Warden just has more interesting dialogue. Like when he's being a little bit sort of, occasionally he's a little bit bitchy with Buck and stuff, and he's just like, there's something about him, he's just slightly more of a personality that I like. Also, there's a guy out there that does a really fucking cool Warden Eternal cosplay.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, it's really cool.
He has the full light up suit built and everything. It's amazing.
I was going to say on the subject of Didact as well, is it worth us mentioning the fact that there was concept art for him for Halo 5 at one point?
Was there? I didn't know that.
There's him in like a cloak.
It was him in Poncho Chief attire. It was Poncho Didact.
And he's like half falling apart and is just held together by hard light. It's really cool. I really wish we had seen it. That's one of the few, like, I don't know. I don't want to say one of the few Promethean things I've seen that's really spoke to me, because I think their art design as a whole is really cool. But that just piece of concept art is really, really cool to me.
If anyone checks the chat, I've sent video of the Warden costume. If you want to have your mind blown for a second at how good that cosplay is.
I've seen it before. It's pretty amazing.
So I guess the final decision that the Warden Eternal is most probably not a Promethean, yet to be confirmed, but because the construct is still very Forerunner, that's why, the art design, if you will, very much mimics that of the other mechanized Promethean enemies. Is there any other thoughts that you think might be worth mentioning before we delve into some speculation as to the return of Prometheans into Halo Infinite?
I think we're pretty well covered with them.
Their overall lore is pretty cool. I appreciate the lore of them more than their representation in the game.
I mean, I will say that the Knights are definitely easier to kill in Halo 5.
Yeah, they definitely roll back some of their stuff. Yeah.
The amount of stuff that Greg Bear put into this trilogy is just very fascinating if you're able to digest it in pieces. I think it's a lot thrown at you to digest, but I think you did a really good job with explaining these high fantasy sci-fi concepts that just kind of lay out everything. So the big question is, will we fight mechanized or mechanical Prometheans in Halo Infinite? And Tom, I'll take it to you. Last time we saw the Prometheans was in Halo 5, seemingly fighting for the Warden Eternal and Cortana. And Cortana is going to be a threat in Halo Infinite. So will we be fighting Prometheans in Halo Infinite?
I think it all depends on the direction the story takes. So obviously, at this point, we know Zeta Halo's partly destroyed. Something has happened with the UNSC and the Banished. Has it been enough to attract Cortana's attention? Because if it has, then I can imagine a Guardian would show up at some point, and if it does, then I think the mechanical Prometheans would naturally come with that. I mean, on Meridian, when the Guardian prepares to leave, that's kind of where the Phaetons start to really appear, so I could definitely picture it doing something like that, where you kind of have the Guardian turn up, and then you've got Phaetons coming in and other vehicles sort of attacking it. But I think it would be a push for there to just naturally be Prometheans on Zeta. I think, like you were saying earlier, obviously with Sentinels, it makes a lot more sense for them to be on a Halo ring. So I think something will need to happen to be the catalyst for mechanical Prometheans turning up.
David, how do you respond?
Yeah, that's pretty well said. I think the conflict on the scale that we've seen for Halo Infinite and the way that it's worded in Shadows of Reach, there is no way Cortana is not aware of the Banished and UNSC fighting. It seems too large a scale of battle. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe it was a big fucking three-way fight that wrecked the ring. That sounds awesome. That's definitely a cutscene. Can't wait to see it.
Avengers level.
Yeah, they're gearing very much towards the Banished being the main enemy, which I think is way more interesting than Prometheans. So I think Prometheans will, if they come in, I think they could be the third faction you fight. Maybe this ring's got flood on it. There could be a fourth faction that may be too much for one game. But I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't like Prometheans in maybe the Warzone mode, and then maybe they're not in the campaign or something like that. Maybe there's DLC that has Prometheans in a different section of the ring that you go to or something. I think they're in the game because they've got to be, they're the physical representation, right, of the created forces. And the created are such a dominant force in the timeline right now that I think that they have to be in the game in some capacity.
There has been a lot of talk online as well, hasn't there, about whether or not we're going to spend the whole game on Zeta. And I know that 343 have been deliberately tight-lipped about that. So I do wonder if maybe we will see a little bit of what's going on in the rest of the universe in this game as well.
It could be interesting on how they decide to do that kind of hopping around, since we are staying with Chief, and the beginning of the game, seemingly he floats in space and we just get going. And it is also interesting to note that 343's kind of said that Infinite is a sorting like landing pad for the next 10 years of just Halo in general. So if we are going to have this like modular Halo that kind of builds itself back together as the story continues to be told, it would be very interesting to see us leave that and then either come back or explore other facets of the galaxy, other corners to kind of have new locations for storytelling.
I don't want to go into it too much because obviously it's not really the episode for it, but I think there's a lot to be said for the appeal for other stories. Like, obviously there's a lot of, I feel at least, fan buzz for something like a second ODST game, and I feel like that could potentially be how they do it, where you have your main campaign that is obviously Chief-centric, it's what's happening on Zeta, and then you kind of have a bit like Destiny with its expansions and seasonal content, you sort of have little content drops that let you leave Zeta and go and do things elsewhere. Like, you could maybe do one where you join Alpha 9 for a set of missions, for example. I think that could be quite a cool way of maybe exploring that.
I've heard that rumor before. People have talked about it, that it won't be Chief will leave. It'll just be, you'll do a very standard feeling Halo side mission where you'll have a mission as the Arbiter. It'll be like either a flashback or just like an off to the side mission. So
there's so many different options for like side characters. I mean, what if it could be a Cyrus, do you know what I mean? Doing the side missions, manhunting something else, or assassinating key targets, or it could be things like that. I mean, it could be Blue Team, if do you know what I mean, they're around.
It leaves them open to, they can do whatever and still have this like semi-open world main map that you're playing, because you have that with a lot of things. Like, you do that a lot in Destiny, where you run around the open world and then you trigger like the mission, and then you kind of like move into an instance of the map, and sometimes that'll take you off. In the open world, there's an energy barrier you can't get through, and then you start your side mission and you go through and you carry on, you do this whole thing. So something like that would be interesting. I think personally I see them being on the Halo, either delivered by a Guardian or already there, because this Halo in particular is a Halo of importance. Maybe the Librarian and Isodidact put them there. I think it helps with the idea of, if you have an open world with territories, you want a variety of enemies, and having areas that are Promethean controlled is a way to like mix it up.
And I also love the idea of like pitting the two factions against each other and stuff. I probably talked about that already, but again, we're getting bogged down in like infinite.
So we can kind of talk about it. So like I have a question here to where we've had, this is our 4th episode now within our Road to Infinite series, with a possible faction that we would fight against if you include Sentinels, because in past Halo game we have fought Sentinels and it's kind of unclear what allegiance they have, so I'm just kind of giving them their own sort of motivation. So we have the Banished, we have the Sentinels, we have the Prometheans, and way back we talked about the Flood, how the Flood could have a resurgence. So we really could have these 4 factions, with the UNSC being a 5th, all competing for some sort of dominance on the ring. And maybe that's not, what we're thrown into on day one, and that's something that's kind of given to us over the course of this 10-year plan. But I very much like the idea of having different regions of this ring, since it is open world, controlled by different factions, if that's the case. So we have a flood infested area, we have banished dominated controlled area, and then the Guardian arrived in one area, and that's where all of those Prometheans are controlled. So I think that is a very real possibility. Maybe not, like I said, right at launch day, but if this is going to be an organic, almost living ring as the game progresses, I can definitely see it kind of advancing into this 5-way war.
I think it kind of makes sense. Like, you want enemies to control the map. I don't see like Sentinels. I think it would be three enemy groups. I think Flood, Prometheans, and Banished seem to be the way to go. I picture if you have Sentinels, they're kind of like wildlife in something like Far Cry. You just you chuck a grenade at an enemy camp and the Sentinels attack it for damaging it, things like that. But I think they'll not be done with the Prometheans. We'll see them again. They'll probably cook up some cool new design and attribute it to
Cortana's influence?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I would like to see Promethean knights and soldiers that have been that have had the Cortana effect, and maybe even have like a slight Spartan edge to them now. I like the idea of fighting enemies slightly more like that with different tactics. It leaves them, because they are a programmable, like buildable enemy, you could do a lot with them.
That'd be really cool. So obviously in pop culture recently, and especially in film, we've seen a trend of things retreading the past in terms of what trilogies have done. And obviously this is 343's third adventure into a titular Halo game. So I do wonder if maybe we're going to see it mimic Halo 3, where you have factions that were traditionally enemies allying with one another to face the bigger threat. Because if you think about it, if the Banished and the UNSC are fighting on Zeta and suddenly a Guardian shows up and they get hit by the pulse, that's going to knock everything out. And if the Prometheans then start coming in off the back of that, they're going to be the immediate threat that everyone's going to have to deal with. Like, I mean, especially in that E3 trailer, for example, you think about it, the Banished have got dominance right now. They've got their AA guns set up everywhere. They're fortified. If a Guardian turns up, all of that means nothing.
So then it could be a matter of partnering with the Banished to defeat Cortana, and then once Cortana's out of the picture, then we go back to fighting each other.
It's interesting. I have a feeling that it's going to be an uneasy alliance, because obviously we know that there is either a character or a entity known as the Harbinger, and I wouldn't be surprised if that turns out to be Cortana and the Created, and maybe it's an uneasy alliance that slowly begins to fracture and segment, a bit like the Great Schism, and then you kind of get caught in the middle of that fallout again.
Or you instigate it on purpose. Yeah, the potential for like the faction warfare is so fascinating. I just can't wait to see what they do with it. There's just so many opportunities in an open world game for that kind of game. To see Halo's turn on it would be awesome, like their take even.
And something that I want to, that might warrant its own Road to Infinite episode later on, is just kind of looking a little bit more into more of brute culture. And because within the Banished, we know from Shadows of Reach that there are different clans within the Banished, and that can even spark up internal conflicts and other types of territorial warfare that can further add depth into this faction and just this overall conquest to have control of the ring.
Well, I mean, especially because that book ultimately reopens the question of where the hell is Atriox, doesn't it? Because up until this point, we were kind of like, oh, it might be that he's away on the Ark.
No, easy, Tom. Easy, Tom.
Kind of like lean it back to Prometheans a little bit. The only other thing, if we're questioning what might come back for Infinite, is if a certain ponchoed leader of the Prometheans should rise again and reappear. If you needed a Harbinger character, could a slightly battered Didact filling the role of Red Skull in his cloak?
Well, like, the word Harbinger is very Forerunner to me. Like, I think Forerunner when I hear that.
It's very mechanical.
They clearly don't like Cortana, but they would. I could see the Banished siding with the Didact, even if he is composed and a Promethean. And
when it comes to the Composer's Forge, was there one on every Halo ring?
No, the Forge I think was a specific place.
Yeah, in Halo, or on Installation 03, there's a portal that leads one to the Composer's Forge. And I think at the end of the 72-hour arc of escalation, I think the Didact was composed outside of the Forge. I think they destroyed the Forge but composed the Didact on Installation 03.
Obviously, we know that 343 have a habit of writing themselves out of difficult situations sometimes. What if there was another composer somewhere, and the Didact is working with the Banished to get said composer, and when he gets it, he then turns on them and composes them to have a new Promethean army?
no, I don't want a knight that's built out of a brute. I'm just saying that now. I have had quite enough of fighting regular knights. I don't like the idea of like Brood Knight that spawns instead of a Watcher out of its back, it's just like a fucking soldier or a composed elite. We're going to end this line of questioning here because that gives me nightmares.
I never really thought about bringing back the Didact until kind of preparing for this episode. I think it was kind of talked about among the Halo community and even our community. But talking about it with you guys, I do think that that's definitely an avenue they can bring back. And I don't think it's that hard to bring it back because of just in terms of like game storytelling. Because like we know, of course, what happened in Escalation. But if someone's just playing the game, they know that the Diadoc fell into a hole in Halo 4, wasn't there in Halo 5. And then, he reappears as a broken down, isolated individual in the Halo Infinite. Like that is something that a gamer can I think not too difficultly understand, and kind of supported with the relevance of the story.
You don't see a body, no character's dead.
No, and given the interactions that Escharum had with Master Chief in a certain recent book, him and the Didact would have something in common about wanting rid of Chief. It unites a faction together, so I could see that. It would be interesting to see what they could do with Prometheans, because like the Flood, to bring the Prometheans back, they're a pretty moldable and changeable enemy. Like, you only need to vaguely keep them and go, this looks vaguely humanoid, this one looks vaguely like a knight, and these look like dogs, but you can totally change up what they do and how they behave.
Yeah.
Oh, I can definitely see like Cortana and Warden, almost reprogramming them a little bit to do different things and attack. Just because naturally with just new games and game development, the sandbox changes. So I think lore wise, they can definitely do an avenue like that to kind of mold the sandbox in the direction that they want to take it.
Plus, think of all the AIs that joined Cortana that now will get like maybe physical bodies and will be around fucking shit up.
Yeah, and bringing very unique gameplay mechanics into these very unique created individuals or, just constructs.
Well, I mean, when you think about it as well, Cortana is a construct who has spent most of her life with John. So she intrinsically knows things like his fighting pattern. So if she can program enemies, then she can potentially program them to counter it, which would be really interesting to see. Because I could imagine you may be coming up against something like a souped up knight that's been constructed specifically to try and stop him, which would be really interesting.
If you want your idea of nightmare fuel, you get spotted by a Promethean and then it'll slightly change its appearance to resemble a Spartan, and then it will start to speak like Cortana.
Oh my god.
And tell you how fucked you are.
I was gonna say quickly, with Escalation, did that come out between 4 and 5?
All of Escalation stuff was post 4.
Okay, so the thing with that then, and what I would say for people who want the Didact back, obviously that storyline with him happened, but they were also planning concept art for him. So they must have had a way that he could get from the end of 72 hours to Halo 5 if that happened. So just think about that. Somewhere, someone, probably Jeff Easterling, we know you're listening, Jeff, has got a plan for how the Didact could come back.
I would welcome that. And I think it would also support 343's sort of commitment to where they said that they're not abandoning storylines and they'll be able to wrap up and address everything that has since been sort of discussed and introduced as they start transitioning to the Banish being the ongoing threat for the Halo future. And I could very much see them bringing back the Didact and kind of having him, Cortana, and the Prometheans being, this faction or these just characters, even if they're at odds with each other, to kind of wrap up the foundations and storylines of Halo 4 and 5 to where we can now just see what is in store for Halo Infinite.
Okay, so are you ready for this mad conspiracy theory I mentioned in our group chat that brings this all together?
You have 5 minutes, Tom.
Can we assume Cortana has control of the Didact's Prometheans? And if so, how has the Prometheans advanced/mobilized under her rule? Short answer, no, she never had control. At the end of Halo 4, when the Didact fell into the portal, and obviously she destroyed herself, their personalities merged to some extent. So the reason why she talks exactly like the Didact in Halo 5, and the reason why they never changed from their orange colour scheme, is because the Didact has been controlling them all along and is using Cortana.
And that's how she's able to be back, because she found the domain.
That's not that outrageous in the grand scheme. I think you can either... You can go with that, or you can go with the obvious that a composed Didact can enter the domain and upload himself.
I like that idea. I like the idea that he's composed, but he's pretty much made himself into an AI now because he's so strong-willed, and because of whatever modifications he made to himself before being composed. Because isn't there like a terminal that has him like experimenting stuff on himself?
Yeah, he's not supposed to be able to be composed, but one can assume that when you're dying, maybe you can turn that off. If anyone would have the ability to undo that, it would be the Didact.
Yeah, so maybe it's experimental. So maybe it's like whatever it did, it stopped him being composed in inverted credits, but still made him this kind of digital thing. And now he's just essentially an AI who's like gotten into the domain, fucked shit up, built himself a physical body, called himself the Harbinger, goes around fucking shit up. I mean, that's all awesome. I'm 100% down with that.
And like the other thing to remember is the domain is not Forerunner in origin, and the domain itself could influence everyone, Didact and Cortana included, which like ties back to those long theories I've had that the Cortana we see is not the Cortana we had and all the rest of it. But like, it's very easy to go down that road of one links to the other and they're all tied together in the same fucked faction, because if you're on the side of the Didact, you're not on the good side.
I mean, obviously we talk about the Didact coming back, but is there any potential for a character like the Librarian to come back as well?
There's savage rumors about her still being around because Guilty Spark is still looking for her.
Well, he found her at the end of Renegades, kind of. An apparition of her, at least.
I get the feeling that the Librarian is being rebuilt one AI fragment at a time, because you had the fragment on Requiem, you had the fragment on Earth, you had the fragment that gave Halsey the key, and I think these have all been collecting in like a central location, because the fragment on Earth nopes off into the sky to rejoin the others somewhere. So that's how you get her back, because physically she dead, but when they all combine back together, kind of like the mendicant bias on the Ark. I think that's how you get that.
Exciting stuff, guys.
It really is. Honestly, like, when it comes to Infinite, especially, and all of this tying in, I think that the key thing, like we said, is going to be that Harbinger. Because, like you said, David, it sounds so much like a Forerunner that I think it's just going to have to tie in somehow.
Well, we will find out in 2021.
Yeah.
Yes, we will.
In like 6 to 12 months, approximately.
Well, I think that was very in-depth. I really enjoyed this conversation. We do need to, unfortunately, wrap it up. In short, though, I think we're all on the same page and agree that mechanical Prometheans will return as some form of enemy. They're kind of attached to Cortana right now. We hope, and I'm kind of convinced that, we might be able to see the Didact. It's a more likely scenario than we started this episode, I think. And potential multi-faction dominance for control and conquest of the ring. Our next lore topic for the Road for Infinite is yet to be decided. We're recording this at the end of 2020, and we had a plan for when Halo Infinite was going to launch, but unfortunately the game was delayed a couple months ago. And so we will be taking a break for the Road to Infinite, but we are not done with it. There are still a handful of topics that I think we can discuss. I think there's some talk about brute sort of clans, and even talking a little bit about Warzone and war games, and kind of even though that's still that's starting to dabble into modes, it's still lore based, and I think that sort of sandbox warrants a discussion. So keep an eye out and an ear out for how we bring back the Road to Infinite in the new year, but probably look for something in the springtime or early summer as we learn more about Halo Infinite and its release date next year. I want to thank everyone for joining us for the Road to Infinite during 2020. It was a great sort of experimental mini-series that has really, I think, got a lot of support and praise from our listeners. So we're thankful for you guys, and we're even open to suggestions. If you guys have a request for a topic that you think has a relevance, whether it's big or small, for Halo Infinite, you can tweet at us, email us, post it on our Discord, or leave us a voicemail. Our voicemail information is 205-EVOLVED. If you wanted to call us, that's 205-386-5388. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. You can find all of our episodes on our website, like Tom mentioned at the top of the show, halopodcastevolved.com. I will throw it back to Tom to give us the final sign out, and we will end it there.
So, with that, I have been your host, who definitely doesn't know the most because I've learned a lot today, Tom. And until next time, evolve!
Evolve!